They call him the Ghost of Seoul, the deadliest mafia boss in Korea. Gun-woo Shin, a man who can make entire families disappear with a single phone call. Politicians bow to him, police captains delete evidence at his request, corporations wire him protection money disguised as consulting fees. But even a ghost has a weakness. His mother, Mrs. Kwon Shin. I spent 5 years scrubbing her floors, 5 years watching her descent into a bipolar, alcohol-fueled madness, 5 years becoming invisible while I studied them, learned their patterns, their secrets, their weaknesses. I thought I escaped. I built a tech empire from nothing. My company, Sentinel Systems, became Seoul's premier cybersecurity firm. I had penthouses, bodyguards, board meetings with Fortune 500 executives. I thought my new life as a CEO made me untouchable. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, she found me. In broad daylight, in front of cameras and witnesses. Mrs. Kwon Shin attacked me in Abkyujung Plaza like I was still her property. The sharp crack of my skull against marble steps, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth, the sound of my pearl necklace snapping, each bead scattering across the polished floor like tiny gunshots. My bodyguard, Gang Wee, stood frozen, a good man trapped in an impossible position. He knew who she was. He knew what refusing her meant. So he stepped aside and watched as she smashed my head against the plaza steps until my Chanel suit was stained red. I tried to go to the police. Officer Moojin, a man I'd seen in Mrs. Kwon's house a dozen times collecting envelopes, laughed in my face. He destroyed my evidence right in front of me, tore up documents, snapped USB drives, told me to go back where I belong. That was their mistake. I'm not just a CEO. I'm not just a survivor. I'm a whistleblower holding the digital kill codes to their entire empire. The offshore accounts, the political assassinations, the police bribes mapped to specific Bitcoin wallets. If you're seeing this video, the Shin family is already burning, and Gun-woo knows exactly who lit the match. If you think this ends with one attack, you're wrong. Because what you just heard is only the beginning of a war built on secrets, betrayal, and a ghost who refuses to die. I'm going to show you exactly how a servant built a digital weapon powerful enough to bankrupt an empire, and why every second you watch brings you closer to the truth they tried to bury. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and don't forget to drop feedbacks in the comment, because your feedbacks help us keep the record straight. Let me take you back. 2018. I was 23 years old, fresh off a failed startup in Manila, drowning in debt. A recruiting agency promised me domestic work for a wealthy Seoul family. Good pay, room and board. Simple. Nothing about the Shin family was simple. The house was a fortress disguised as a home. 32 rooms, 17 surveillance cameras in the main wing alone. I counted them during my first week because counting kept me sane. Guards at every entrance, tinted SUVs in the driveway that never seemed to leave. The kind of security you see around embassies, not private residences. My employer was Mrs. Kwon Shin, 68 years old, diagnosed bipolar, and drowning in soju by 10 a.m. most days. Her son Gun-woo visited every Sunday for exactly 90 minutes. He never raised his voice, never showed emotion. He'd sit in the dining room reviewing spreadsheets while she ranted about servants stealing her jewelry or plotting against her. His face remained blank, like he was watching a mildly interesting documentary rather than his mother's mental breakdown. The other servants warned me within hours of my arrival. Become invisible. Speak only when spoken to. Never look her in the eye during episodes. I became a ghost in that house. Strategic invisibility, that's what I called it. I learned to predict her mood swings by the angle of her posture, the cadence of her footsteps on the marble. When she shuffled, it meant depression and relative safety. I could work in peace, maybe even rest for a few hours. When she walked with purpose, heels clicking like a metronome, it meant mania and danger. Those were the days I'd find crystal glasses shattered against walls, accusations screamed at shadows, and sometimes her fists connecting with whatever or whoever was nearest. But invisibility gave me something they never expected: access. I was in every room. I heard every phone call. I saw the envelopes of cash handed to police officers who arrived through the service entrance at odd hours. I watched politicians arrive at 2 a.m., leaving with briefcases they didn't arrive with. I organized pills she never took. I hid vodka bottles she'd already emptied. I cleaned vomit from silk sheets worth more than my annual salary. One night, I'll never forget, I was cleaning the second-floor hallway when I heard Gunwoo's voice through his mother's door. Cold, surgical. He was on the phone. The journalist publishes tomorrow. Handle it tonight. Make it look like suicide. Use the pills, not the rope. His wife has medical training. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Every morning, I checked the news on my phone during my 10-minute breakfast break. And there it was. Prominent journalist found dead in apparent suicide. The article mentioned his history of depression, his struggle with insomnia, the pills found in his system. Everything neat, everything explained. That's when I understood. I wasn't working for a wealthy family. I was working for a cartel with government contracts and society page photos. And I made a decision. I would learn everything, document everything, and one day I would escape with enough knowledge to ensure they could never drag me back. The human brain is remarkable under pressure. I memorized safe combinations by associating numbers with songs. The nursery rhyme my mother sang had the same rhythm as Mrs. Kwan's jewelry safe: 4, 8, 15, 16. I photographed documents by pretending to adjust the blinds, angling my phone just right to capture clear images without the flash. I recorded conversations using a voice-activated recorder hidden in a tampon box, the one place I knew Mrs. Kwan would never search. For 18 months, I built an archive. Not for revenge, not yet, for insurance, for survival. But I wasn't the only one documenting secrets in that house. Mrs. Kwan kept a diary, leather-bound, hidden in a false bottom of her antique dresser. She wrote in it every night after her 3rd bottle of soju, and she was too drunk to remember where she hid the key. It hung on a thin chain around her neck, but she'd pass out by 11 p.m., and I'd learned to slip it off without waking her. Inside were the things Gunwoo never wanted written down: names, dates, amounts. Junseo Park, highway construction contract, 2.4 billion won, 20% to MJ. Detective Choi, case number 4432, closed for 800 million won. MJ. I'd seen that name on envelopes. Officer Moo Jin, the same officer who would later destroy my evidence and laugh in my face. I photographed every page over 6 weeks, 30 seconds per page during her bathroom trips. My heart rate hit 140 BPM every single time. One mistake, one creak of the floorboard, one shift in her breathing pattern, and I'd disappear like that journalist. But I was good at being invisible, and Mrs. Kwan was too drunk to notice the ghost in her room. Then came October 14th, 2019, the night everything changed. I woke to the sound of tires screeching outside the mansion gates. 2:47 a.m. I remembered the exact time because I checked my phone, thinking maybe it was a delivery truck or a lost driver. Then I heard the gunfire. Automatic weapons, glass shattering, alarms blaring throughout the house. I'd done emergency drills. Mrs. Kwan insisted on them every month. In case the Kang family comes for us, she'd say during her paranoid episodes. I'd thought she was delusional, seeing enemies in every shadow. She wasn't. The Kang Syndicate, Seoul's second largest crime family. Rumor was they'd been feuding with the Shins over control of the Gangnam district's construction contracts. Contracts worth hundreds of millions, enough to kill for. I rolled out of bed and crawled underneath it, pulling my pre-packed emergency bag toward me. My phone, my passport, the USB drives containing all my documentation, a kitchen knife I'd hidden there months ago. The knife was pathetic, I knew that, but holding it made me feel less helpless. Footsteps thundered past my door, men shouting in Korean, "Find the woman, Sing-jae wants her alive." I pressed myself against the wall behind my bed, my phone clutched in one hand and the knife in the other. Through the crack under my door, I could see shadows moving, flashlight beams sweeping back and forth. The attack lasted 17 minutes. I counted every second. A man screaming, a wet thud, silence. When the gunfire stopped, I heard a new voice, calm, authoritative, speaking through a megaphone. "Goon-woo, you have 10 minutes to transfer the Yoido contracts to the Kang portfolio. 10 minutes or your mother dies." I risked a glance through my window. The courtyard was lit by headlights. 20 men in black tactical gear surrounded the house. In the center stood a man in an immaculate gray suit, Sing-jae Kang. Sing-jae Kang, 46 years old, Harvard MBA, ran his family's empire like a hedge fund. Where Goon-woo was a ghost, Sing-jae was a wolf in Italian wool. And he had Mrs. Kwan on her knees in the driveway, a gun to her head. Goon-woo emerged from the front entrance, alone, hands raised. His face was expressionless. No fear, no anger, just cold calculation. He walked out like he was attending a board meeting. "You'll get your contracts, Sing-jae, but if you pull that trigger, I'll erase your entire bloodline by sunrise. Your mother, your sisters, your daughter at Stanford. I have men in California right now." Sing-jae's jaw tightened. He lowered the gun slightly. "Transfer the contracts, now." Goon-woo pulled out his phone, typed calmly for maybe 30 seconds. A moment later, Sing-jae's phone buzzed. He checked it, nodded. Sing-jae released Mrs. Kwan. She collapsed into Goon-woo's arms, sobbing incoherently. He held her like a prop, his eyes locked on Sing-jae. "This isn't over." Sing-jae smiled. "It never is." The Kang convoy retreated. Goon-woo watched them leave, still holding his mother. Then he looked directly at the window where I was hiding. For one terrifying second, I thought he saw me. His eyes seemed to pierce through the curtain, through the darkness, straight into my soul. Then he turned and carried his mother inside. I collapsed against the wall, hyperventilating. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I packed my bag that night. Every document, every photo, every recording. I told myself, one more month, save enough for a plane ticket, then disappear. But fear is a strange motivator. It makes you cautious when you should be bold. I stayed for 3 more months, paralyzed by the unknown, until Mrs. Kwan gave me no choice. It was February 3rd, 2020. She was drunk. Nothing unusual about that. But this time, she was manic, convinced I'd stolen a diamond bracelet she'd lost while intoxicated the week before. She hurled a dinner plate at me. It shattered against the wall, a shard slicing my cheek. Blood trickled down my face, but I stood perfectly still. I'd learned that movement during her episodes only made things worse. Gonwoo was visiting that day. He watched the entire scene with those dead eyes. "Mother, go rest. I'll handle this." Mrs. Kwan stumbled away, still muttering accusations. Gonwoo approached me. He stopped 6 inches from my face. "Did you take it?" "No, sir." Long pause. Ganwoo studied my face like a scientist examining a specimen. I believe you. My mother is unwell. But if I ever find out you've taken anything, documents, photos, information, you'll wish she'd killed you today. He walked away. I stood there, blood still dripping from my cheek, hands trembling. That was February 3rd, 2020. I left that night, withdrew my savings, 14 million won, about 12,000 USD, bought a plane ticket to Manila, and I swore I'd never be invisible again. I spent 6 months in Manila, living on instant noodles and building my escape plan. Not a physical escape, I had already done that, a financial one. Everything I'd learned in the Shin household, I weaponized. I'd watched Ganwoo's tech consultants install his security systems. They were sloppy, overconfident. They used default passwords on half their admin portals. They didn't rotate credentials. They left maintenance backdoors wide open. I'd memorized IP addresses, server locations, encryption protocols, and I'd kept a list. I built my first product in my apartment, a vulnerability scanner that could identify weaknesses in corporate networks in under 30 seconds. I knew exactly what to look for because I'd seen what criminals looked for. I called it Sentinel. But here's what most people don't understand about cybersecurity. It's not magic, it's methodology. My scanner worked on a simple principle: automated penetration testing combined with behavioral analysis. First, it mapped the entire network topology, identifying every connected device. Then it tested each access point against a database of 47,000 known vulnerabilities: default passwords, unpatched software, open ports, misconfigured firewalls. The real innovation? I taught it to think like a criminal. Instead of just finding vulnerabilities, it prioritized them by exploitability. Which weakness would a gang member use first? Which required the least technical skill? Which provided the highest value access? My first client was a Manila shipping company being extorted by a local gang. They'd tried 3 security firms. All failed. I identified the breach in 18 minutes. An unsecured CCTV camera with factory default credentials, username admin, password admin. Embarrassingly simple, but that's how most breaches happen. The gang was accessing their cargo manifests in real time, knowing exactly which containers to hijack. But here's the forensic detail that mattered. I didn't just find the camera. I traced the unauthorized access logs, pulled the IP addresses, and discovered they'd been inside the system for 7 months. 7 months of time-stamped evidence. I documented everything, preserved the logs in their original state, what's called maintaining chain of custody. In digital forensics, you never work on the original data. You create a forensic image, an exact bit-by-bit copy, and calculate its hash value. Think of a hash like a digital fingerprint. If even 1 byte changes, the entire hash changes. This proves the evidence hasn't been tampered with. I closed the hole, encrypted their network, implemented 2-factor authentication on every access point, then handed them a forensic report that could hold up in court: authentication logs, packet captures, hash-verified evidence. Charged them $50,000. Word spread. In the underground business world, reputation is currency. Within a year, I had 47 corporate clients. Within 2 years, I'd opened offices in Singapore and Seoul. Seoul. I know what you're thinking. Why go back? Why risk everything by returning to the city where a mafia boss wanted me dead? 2 reasons. First, Seoul's tech sector was booming. Every major corporation needed cybersecurity. The market was worth billions, and I had expertise most consultants could only dream of. I wanted Ganwoo to see what I'd become. I wanted him to know that the invisible servant he'd threatened had built an empire of her own. Ego, pride, stupidity, call it what you want, but for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I rented a penthouse in Gangnam, hired bodyguards, drove a Tesla, attended charity galas where I rubbed shoulders with prosecutors and CEOs. I wore designer suits and sat on panels about women in tech. I smiled for cameras and gave interviews about my inspirational journey from poverty to success. I told myself I was safe. I had money, lawyers, security, a legitimate business. Ganwoo couldn't touch me without exposing himself. I was an idiot. The PTSD came in waves. Some nights I'd wake up at 2:47 a.m., the exact time of the Kang attack, drenched in sweat, convinced I heard gunfire. I'd check every door, every window, every lock. My hand would reach for the gun I kept in my nightstand, and I'd spend the next hour watching security camera feeds on my phone. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Hajun Park, a kind man in his 50s who specialized in trauma. He taught me grounding techniques. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear. But he couldn't teach me to forget. Maria, you've built an incredible life, but you're still looking over your shoulder. Do you think you'll ever feel truly safe? No, not while they're still out there. I started sleeping with a loaded gun under my pillow. I installed cameras in every room of my apartment. I ran background checks on every employee, every contractor, every person who came within 10 feet of me. Paranoia? Maybe. But in my world, paranoia keeps you alive. For 3 years, nothing happened. Ganwoo never contacted me, never sent threats, never acknowledged my existence. I started to believe I'd escaped. Then, 3 weeks ago, I made a mistake. I took a shortcut through Apgujeong Plaza, Seoul's most expensive shopping district. I'd done it 100 times. It was public, safe, crowded with tourists and wealthy shoppers. My bodyguard, Gangwee, flanked me as usual. I was on my phone, laughing at a message from my COO about a new client contract. I didn't see her until it was too late. Mrs. Kwan. She stepped into my path, and I froze. She'd aged terribly, skin sallow and hanging loose, eyes wild with a mix of mania and recognition, but there was no mistaking her. You! Gangwee immediately stepped between us. Ma'am, we need to leave, now. But I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Mrs. Kwan lunged. Gangwee caught her wrist, then released it like he'd been burned. He knew who she was. Thief! Whore! You stole from me! Shoppers stopped and stared. Phones came out. Someone was recording. Gangwee, get her away from me. Mrs. Kwan slapped me, hard. My vision blurred. I stumbled backward. Gangwee didn't move. Then I was on the ground. Mrs. Kwan was on top of me, hands around my throat. Her grip was skeletal but impossibly strong. I'll kill you. You should have stayed on your knees where you belong. I couldn't breathe. Her thumbs pressed against my windpipe. The world was going dark around the edges. Through blurring vision, I saw Gangwee standing motionless, his face torn with conflict. Other bodyguards were pulling at Mrs. Kwan, but she was like a rabid animal. Then I felt it, my head smashing against the marble steps. Once, twice, 3 times. The smell of my own blood, metallic, overwhelming. I remember thinking, this is it. She's going to kill me, and everyone will film it, and no one will stop her. Security guards finally wrestled Mrs. Kwan away. She was screaming incoherently. I lay motionless, blood pooling around my head. Gangwee knelt beside me, his face white. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My family. He has my family. I woke up in St. Mary's Hospital. Concussion, fractured skull, 32 stitches. Dr. Hajun, my therapist, was there when I opened my eyes. He'd seen the news. Maria, thank God. When I saw the footage, I thought she found me. Who is she? The mother of the man who's going to kill me. I discharged myself against medical advice 6 hours later, walked out of that hospital with a splitting headache and a phone full of news alerts. The videos had gone viral, millions of views. My face, my blood, splattered across the internet. Headlines screamed, "Tech CEO attacked by elderly woman. Bizarre plaza assault caught on camera." Comments speculated, who is Maria Yates? Why didn't security stop her? Gun-woo would know. He'd see it. He'd know I'd been humiliated by his mother. There was only one thing left to do, the thing I'd been avoiding for 5 years. Go to the police. I walked into the Gangnam police station at 11 p.m. I'd brought everything: medical records, security footage, witness statements from my staff. I asked to speak to the lead detective in the organized crime unit. A uniformed officer looked me up and down. His expression shifted from professional to amused. Organized crime? Ma'am, you were assaulted by an old woman. That's simple battery. The woman is Mrs. Kwon Shin. Her son is Gun-woo Shin. This isn't a random attack. It's connected to... The officer's face went neutral. He held up a hand. Wait here. He disappeared into a back office. I stood alone in the sterile waiting area. Other officers glanced at me, whispered. I knew that look. I'd seen it before in the Shin household. Recognition. Fear. The subtle body language of people who know they're in proximity to danger. A door opened. Officer Moo Jin emerged. Early 50s, heavyset, wearing an expensive watch that didn't match his civil servant salary. Ms. Yates, come with me. I followed him into a cramped interrogation room. He sat, didn't offer me a chair. He reviewed my file with exaggerated slowness. You want to file charges against Mrs. Kwon Shin for assault? Yes, and I have evidence linking her son to... Evidence of what? Tax evasion? Political corruption? Because I see here you worked as a domestic servant in their home until 2020. Tell me, did you sign a non-disclosure agreement during your employment? I should have seen it coming. In any legal case, chain of custody matters. Who collected the evidence? When? How was it stored? Can you prove it hasn't been tampered with? My evidence was solid by technical standards, time-stamped photos, hash-verified recordings, but I'd collected it myself, while employed in their home, without a warrant, without oversight. Any competent defense attorney would argue it was inadmissible, obtained through unauthorized access, potentially fabricated by a disgruntled employee. I signed nothing. I was assaulted by a mentally ill woman who will testify she was defending herself because you stole from her. This is how the legal system fails victims of powerful people. It's not that the evidence doesn't exist, it's that the process is designed to exclude evidence obtained outside official channels. If I'd reported Gun-woo's crimes while I was his servant, I'd have needed the police to obtain warrants, to conduct their own searches, to verify my claims through independent investigation. But I went to the police now, and the police were owned by Gun-woo. That's a lie. Officer Moo Jin leaned back, smiling. Is it? You left her employment suddenly, took a considerable amount of money, built a company very quickly afterward. Some might say suspiciously quickly. He was building a counter-narrative. In court, this is called establishing reasonable doubt. He didn't need to prove I stole from Mrs. Kwon. He just needed to make it plausible, plant the seed that I was a criminal making false accusations to cover my own crimes. And then I understood. This wasn't an investigation. It was a negotiation. He was offering me a choice: walk away or be destroyed. I know who you are, Officer Mujin. I know what you take from the Shin family. I have your Bitcoin wallet address. I can trace every payment. Mujin's smile vanished. He stood abruptly, towered over me. You have nothing. You're a servant with delusions of grandeur. He picked up my evidence folder, opened it, began tearing up documents, snapping USB drives in half. This is destruction of evidence, a crime, but who investigates when the investigator is the criminal? You can't. That's evidence. Was evidence. Now it's trash. He tossed the destroyed files into a wastebasket, looked at me with contempt. In a functional justice system, this is where I'd file a complaint, request an independent investigation, demand a different jurisdiction handle the case. But I wasn't in a functional justice system. I was in Gun Wu's system. Go home, Miss Yates. Go back to whatever life you've built, because if you keep pushing this, you won't have a life to go back to. He opened the door, waited for me to leave. And Miss Yates? Gun Wu says hello. I vomited in the parking lot, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, from rage. I'd been naive, childish. I'd thought justice was something you could buy with evidence and money and the right connections. But justice doesn't exist when the system itself is compromised. I drove to my office, locked myself in the server room, the most secure location I had, and I started planning. If the system wouldn't protect me, I'd protect myself. If they wanted war, I'd give them war. I'd kept copies of everything. Triple encrypted backups on servers in 3 countries. Photos, audio, video, Mrs. Kwan's diary, IP addresses of bribes transferred as Bitcoin. But I needed more. I needed something so catastrophic, so undeniable, that Gun Wu couldn't make it disappear. I needed the nuclear option. It was 3 a.m. when someone knocked on my office door. I jumped. My hand went to the gun in my desk drawer. Who is it? It's me. Please, I need to talk to you. Gangwei. I debated. My hand hovered over my phone, ready to call security. Then I opened the door. Gangwei looked terrible. Bruises on his face, split lip. His hands were shaking. You stood there. You let her nearly kill me. I know, and His voice broke. He has my family, my wife, my daughter. Gun Wu's men took them 2 days before the attack. He said if I protected you, he'd kill them. If I let his mother through, if I did nothing, he'd let them live. I understood that kind of leverage. I'd seen Gun Wu use it 100 times. Why are you here, Gangwei? He reached into his jacket. I tensed, but he pulled out a USB drive and a folded document. Because my family is already dead. I got a photo 2 hours ago. Gun Wu killed them anyway, said I was a loose end. His hands were trembling so hard he could barely hold the USB drive. I took it from him. He made me a promise 3 years ago. If I ever betrayed him, he'd kill my family slowly. So I documented everything, every crime, every bribe, every murder. I thought if I had evidence, I could negotiate, I could protect them. Tears streamed down his face. I was wrong. There's no negotiating with a ghost. I plugged in the USB drive. Files flooded the screen. My eyes widened. But I didn't just open them blindly. Years of cybersecurity work had taught me to verify first, trust later. I ran a hash check on every file. SHA-256 algorithm, industry standard. The hash values would tell me if these files had been altered since Gangwei created them. All authentic, unchanged. Then I checked the metadata, the invisible information embedded in every digital file, creation dates, modification dates, GPS coordinates from the drone footage, camera serial numbers. This metadata is like a file's birth certificate. It can't lie unless someone with serious technical skill has scrubbed it, and even then, the scrubbing leaves traces. The ghost proof. Drone footage and encrypted audio files proving Gun Wu ordered the killing of Assemblyman Kim Jae-won in 2021, the hit that shocked the nation and was ruled a tragic accident. The footage showed Gunwoo's men loosening the brake lines on Kim's car. High resolution, but more importantly, authenticated. The metadata showed it was filmed on March 14, 2021 at 11:47 p.m., exactly 16 hours before Kim's car went off the cliff on Bukhan Mountain Road. I verified the audio files next. Voice biometrics, frequency analysis matching Gunwoo's known voice patterns from public speeches. Over 98% match probability, the kind of evidence that stands up in court because it's mathematically verifiable, not just, it sounds like him. The offshore key. Login credentials and bypass codes for the Shin family's encrypted offshore server, holding 450 billion won, roughly 340 million USD, funds from drug trafficking, embezzled pension funds, construction kickbacks, every account, every shell company, every transaction. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I tested the credentials. They worked. I was in. But I didn't just browse, I documented. Screen captures with timestamps, hash values of the account databases. I created forensic images of everything, ensuring I had authenticated copies that could be verified by any competent digital forensics team. Account numbers scrolled past, transaction histories, shell companies in Panama, Singapore, Cyprus. The police dossier, a database mapping Bitcoin wallet addresses to specific police officers, not just Mu Jin, captains, commissioners, prosecutors, each wallet tied to specific case numbers where evidence disappeared or charges were dropped. Here's what most people don't understand about cryptocurrency. It's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain, forever, immutable. You can trace the flow of money from wallet to wallet, and while the wallets don't have names attached, they leave patterns. Gang Hee had done the detective work. He'd identified wallet addresses through surveillance, watching officers check their phones, photographing QR codes, tracking deposits that coincided with case dismissals. Then he'd used blockchain explorers to trace the transaction histories. A spreadsheet, hundreds of entries, 15.4 billion won in total bribes over 5 years. Every transaction had a transaction ID, a hash that proved it happened. You can't fake a blockchain entry. You can't delete it. It's distributed across thousands of computers worldwide. This wasn't circumstantial evidence. This was mathematical proof. And then I saw it, a real-time tracker. Gang Hee had installed malware on Gunwoo's accountant's laptop, not just any malware, a keylogger combined with a packet sniffer. It captured every keystroke, every password, every financial transfer as it happened. I could watch money moving right now. 80 million won transferred to Officer Mujin's wallet 4 hours ago. The timestamp matched exactly when I'd left the police station. The blockchain confirmed it. Transaction ID 7A4F8CB1E9. Permanently recorded. Permanent evidence that Mujin had been paid immediately after destroying my police report. I looked up at Gang Hee. He was standing by the window, staring at the Seoul skyline. Gang Hee, this is everything. We can bury him. I know. We have to move fast. Get this to journalists, international media. The FBI has offices in Seoul. It won't matter. He turned to face me. There was a strange peace in his expression. He'll kill everyone connected to that drive. Journalists, lawyers, you. He'll burn the world down before he lets this go public. Then what do I do? You give it to someone who's already at war with him, someone who has nothing to lose. Sung Jae Kong. Gang Hee nodded. The Kong syndicate has been trying to take down the Shins for a decade. If you give them the offshore codes, they can drain Gunwoo's accounts before he knows what's happening. Without money, he has no power. Without power, he's just a man. I studied Gang Hee's face. There was something final about his posture. What are you going to do? Gang Hee smiled sadly. I'm going to make sure you have time to do it. He walked toward the door. I stood. Gang Hee, thank you for trusting me, even after what I did. He left. The door closed. I stood alone in the server room, USB drive in hand. Gong Hee was found dead 12 hours later, ruled a suicide, jumped from the roof of his apartment building. The police closed the case in 6 hours. No investigation, no witnesses, no questions. I didn't mourn. I didn't have time, because Gong Hee died buying me a window, and I wasn't going to waste it.
Sung Jae Kang didn't have an email address. You didn't just contact a man like him through LinkedIn, but I had something better, his digital footprint. The Kang Syndicate operated their logistics through an encrypted communication platform. Think Signal, but built by paranoid criminals. I'd identified their servers while building Sentinel's threat database. I didn't need to hack them, I just needed to knock on the door. I sent the message at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Simple, direct, ghost evidence available, time sensitive, upload portal required. At 12:03 a.m. Wednesday, I received a reply, an encrypted upload link and a Bitcoin wallet address. They wanted proof before negotiating. I uploaded a single file, drone footage of Ganwoo ordering Assemblyman Kim's assassination. The timestamp proved it was from Gangwee's archive, 37 seconds of Ganwoo's voice giving explicit instructions, his face clearly visible. At 1:15 a.m., my phone rang. Private number. I answered, put it on speaker. "You're either very brave or very stupid, Miss Yates." Sung Jae's voice, filtered, distant, but unmistakably him. "I'm desperate, and I have something you've wanted for 10 years. The Shin offshore accounts? Gangwee was your bodyguard, wasn't he? I heard about his accident." "It wasn't an accident." Sung Jae chuckled darkly. "No, it wasn't. What do you want in exchange for the access codes?" "I want Ganwoo destroyed, financially, politically, completely." Pause. Static on the line. "You understand what you're asking. This starts a war." "The war already started. Ganwoo just doesn't know he's losing yet." I uploaded the complete archive, gigabytes of data transferring in real time. "If this is fake, if you're setting me up, check wallet 0x73D37B9. 80 million won transferred from Shin Corporation shell company to Officer Mu Jin 4 days ago. Check login credentials for Swiss account 477388294B. You'll find 120 billion won in liquid assets." Silence. Then, it's real. All of it. Every account, every bribe, every murder. Ganwoo kept records of everything because he thought he was untouchable. Sung Jae laughed. He was wrong. My monitors lit up. I was watching real-time financial transactions. The Kang Syndicate was moving fast. Sung Jae didn't waste time. Within 90 minutes, his financial team had accessed the Shin accounts and initiated hostile transfers. Money flowing out of accounts. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. But this wasn't just theft. What Sung Jae was doing had a legal term, constructive seizure. In international law, when you can prove that assets were obtained through criminal activity, you can petition courts to freeze those assets. But that takes time, lawyers, judges, bureaucracy. Sung Jae was doing it the criminal way, taking the money first, forcing Ganwoo to sue to get it back. And to sue, Ganwoo would have to admit the accounts existed. He'd have to explain where 450 billion won came from. He'd have to produce documentation that would incriminate him. It's a legal trap. Once Ganwoo claimed ownership of the offshore accounts, prosecutors could seize them as proceeds of crime. If he didn't claim them, Sung Jae kept the money. Either way, Ganwoo lost.
This is how you dismantle a criminal empire in the modern age, not with bullets, with banking regulations. The same laws designed to stop terrorism financing and money laundering become weapons. FATF regulations, swift transfer monitoring, automatic suspicious activity reports triggered when large sums move between jurisdictions. They drained 280 billion won in 3 hours. But here's what was happening behind the scenes. Every transfer over $10,000 automatically generates a currency transaction report in the destination country. Every cross-border wire transfer gets flagged by anti-money laundering systems. Sung Jae's team was deliberately tripping every alarm. They wanted regulators to notice. They wanted investigations launched. Shell companies collapsed. Real estate holdings transferred. Cryptocurrency wallets emptied. The ghost of Seoul was bleeding out, and he didn't even know it yet. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Massive financial irregularities at Shin Corporation. Stock trading halted. By sunrise, Gunwoo's legitimate business was under investigation, but not by prosecutors on his payroll, by international regulatory bodies, the Financial Supervisory Service, the Korean Financial Intelligence Unit. Eventually, this would reach Interpol and the FBI's International Corruption Unit. Here's what happens in a case like this. Once enough red flags are raised, it becomes impossible to bury. Too many jurisdictions involved, too many regulators asking questions. The evidence gets shared across borders through mutual legal assistance treaties. Even if Gunwoo owned every prosecutor in Seoul, he couldn't own prosecutors in Switzerland, Singapore, and Panama simultaneously. And once asset forfeiture proceedings begin, the burden of proof shifts. Gunwoo would have to prove his wealth was legitimate. He'd have to produce tax returns, business records, evidence of legal income. He couldn't. The ghost was becoming visible. I packed a go bag. Passport, cash, burner phones, gun. I knew what came next. Gunwoo would realize who'd burned him. He'd come for me with everything he had left. So I disappeared. I'd prepared for this. Safe houses in Busan, Osaka, Manila, encrypted communications, new identity documents. I'd learned from the best, after all. I ended up in a nondescript apartment in Busan. Spartan, temporary. I watched the news on a burner phone. Unprecedented seizure of assets linked to alleged organized crime. Authorities say this is the largest financial investigation in Seoul's history. I waited for the knock on the door, the bullet through the window, the car bomb, but it didn't come. A week passed. Sung Jae's people arrested Gunwoo's accountants, his lawyers, his enforcers. The Kang syndicate was dismantling the Shin empire piece by piece. But more importantly, the international legal machinery had started turning. This is how modern financial crimes are prosecuted, through coordinated, multi-jurisdictional task forces. The Korean Financial Intelligence Unit had filed suspicious activity reports with counterpart agencies in 17 countries. Under international anti-money laundering treaties, specifically the FATF recommendations, those reports triggered automatic investigations. Switzerland froze 85 billion won in accounts. Singapore issued restraining orders on another 47 billion won. Panama, notorious for banking secrecy, even cooperated because the evidence was so overwhelming that protecting Gunwoo would risk their entire banking sector being blacklisted. This is called cascading asset forfeiture. Once one jurisdiction freezes assets, others follow. Each country files a criminal forfeiture action, legal proceedings to permanently confiscate the money. Gunwoo would have to appear in court in each country to contest the seizures. And to contest them, he'd have to prove the money was legitimate. He couldn't. The legal burden had shifted. In civil asset forfeiture cases, which is what these were, the government doesn't have to prove you're guilty beyond reasonable doubt. They just have to show that the assets are more likely than not proceeds of crime. Preponderance of evidence, 51%. With Gangwee's documentation, they had 99%. But Gunwoo himself vanished. The ghost became a literal ghost. And that's the frustrating reality of international law enforcement. You can seize someone's money, you can shut down their business, you can issue arrest warrants through Interpol red notices. But if they're in a country that doesn't extradite, or if they've gone completely underground, physical arrest becomes nearly impossible. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no messages, just silence. That's when I realized silence is scarier than threats. Because silence means he's planning, and Gunwoo doesn't plan small. Day 14 in hiding. I'm disheveled, exhausted, but alive. I'm reviewing financial news on my laptop. Sung Jae delivered. Gunwoo's empire was ash. His political connections cut him loose, his police protection evaporated. Even Mrs. Kwan, who'd started all of this, was committed to a psychiatric facility. The ghost of Seoul was broken. I closed my laptop, allowed myself a brief smile. I walked to the window. Seoul spreads out in the distance, the city where I was once invisible. I'd done it. I'd taken down one of the most powerful criminals in Korea, using nothing but information and strategic alliances. I thought I'd won. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m., the exact time I'd first contacted Sungjae. Unknown number. I should have ignored it, thrown the phone out the window, run. But I answered. I picked it up, put it to my ear, said nothing. Breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. Not labored. Controlled. The breathing of a predator who knows exactly where its prey is hiding. No words, just breathing. For 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then, finally, a voice. Soft, calm. The same voice that once told me he'd bury me alive if I stole from his mother. Checkmate. The line went dead. I stood frozen. Then, multiple monitors in the apartment flickered. They all displayed the same thing. Live CCTV footage of me standing in this apartment from multiple angles. He'd been watching the entire time. 14 days. He knew where I was, what I was doing, who I was talking to. He let me win because he was planning something worse. My laptop screen changed. A new video file opened automatically. Drone footage, aerial view of Dr. Ha Jun's house, his car in the driveway, lights on inside. The next file, Sungjae Kang leaving his office building. A red laser dot appeared on his chest, tracking him. The next file, my parents' house in Manila. A timestamp, live. He wasn't going to kill me. He was going to kill everyone I'd ever cared about, everyone who'd helped me, and he was going to make me watch. But here's what Ganwoo didn't know. I'd learned from him. I'd learned that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's information. And I'd kept one final insurance policy. I pulled out a USB drive from a hidden pocket. It's labeled Dead Man's Switch. The concept is simple, but legally powerful. It's a form of automated disclosure, sometimes called a dead man's switch or dead hand trigger. I'd programmed a script that monitors my activity. Every 72 hours, I must log in to a specific server and enter a unique passphrase. If I fail to do so, if I'm killed, kidnapped, or otherwise prevented from accessing the system, the script automatically executes. What happens then? Every piece of evidence gets encrypted with a different key and uploaded simultaneously to multiple recipients. Not just one journalist who can be threatened, 43 different entities across multiple jurisdictions. The FBI's International Corruption Unit, Interpol's Financial Crimes Division, the Washington Post, the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, Reuters, Al Jazeera, Korean broadcasting networks, opposition politicians, anti-corruption NGOs. The uploads are staggered by 30-second intervals to prevent coordinated interdiction. The files are sent through encrypted channels, PGP encrypted emails, secure file transfer protocols, torrents seeded on distributed networks. Here's the legal genius of this approach. Once the information is public, it becomes impossible to suppress. Journalists have legal protections. They can't be prosecuted for publishing information they received from a whistleblower. And once it's published in one jurisdiction, it spreads globally within hours. Gun-woo could kill me, but the information would outlive us both. This is called insurance through distributed liability. No single person holds all the leverage. The leverage is distributed across dozens of institutions that Gun-woo can't simultaneously control. If I don't log into a specific server every 72 hours, every piece of evidence, every file, every recording uploads automatically to the FBI, Interpol, the Washington Post, the BBC, and 43 other international news agencies. And here's what makes it legally bulletproof. I'm not threatening to release classified information or state secrets. I'm threatening to expose crimes. In most jurisdictions, there are whistleblower protections for exactly this scenario. Even if Gun-woo tried to sue for breach of privacy, he'd have to admit the information was true. He'd have to claim ownership of the crimes. Gun-woo can kill me, but he can't stop the truth. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Let's talk. So here we are, the ghost of Seoul and the invisible servant who destroyed his empire. Two people who know too much about each other. Two people who can't let the other live. I picked up my gun, checked the magazine, chambered around. If you're seeing this video, it means one of two things. Either I've won and Gun-woo is finally in prison where he belongs, or I'm dead and this is my final testimony. Either way, the world will know the truth. My phone rang again. I looked at it. The ghost. I answered, put it on speaker. I'm not running anymore. Good, because I'm right outside your door. A soft knock. 3 precise taps. You know the funny thing about ghosts? They're already dead. They just don't know it yet. The doorknob turned. Slowly, the door began to open. A sliver of hallway light cut into the darkened apartment. My finger tightened on the trigger. A single gunshot echoed through the apartment. Then, silence. So now you know the truth. Not the headlines, not the lies the Shin Empire paid to bury, but the real story. The servant who watched in silence, the CEO who survived, and the whistleblower who turned their own secrets into a weapon. But here's the question that keeps me awake at night. Was I right to burn everything down? Because when the Shin family started collapsing, innocent people lost jobs, alliances shattered, and the ghost didn't disappear, he adapted. Gang Hee's silence still haunts me. Officer Moo Jin is still walking free. And somewhere out there, Mrs. Kwan is still breathing. So tell me the truth, because I read every comment. Would you have done what I did? Was this justice or revenge? Did Gang Hee betray me, or was he just another victim trapped in a system bigger than both of us? And if you were standing in that plaza, believing on those marble steps, would you have fought back or walked away? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your verdict. Because this story isn't finished, and your voice shapes what comes next. If you want to see how the ghost responds, if you want the full truth behind the financial war, and if you want to know who really survives when empires fall, subscribe now. Turn on notifications and stay with this channel. Because the next chapter doesn't begin with peace. It begins with retaliation. And trust me, the ghost of Seoul never forgets.